Imagine a god who cannot be tamed, whose laughter cuts deeper than any blade. A being of fire and shadow, mischief and cunning, moving unseen among the mighty, planting chaos like seeds in fertile soil. This is Loki, the master of deceit, the seducer of gods, the father of monsters. The halls of Asgard gleam with gold, the laughter of gods echoing through the air, but behind the gilded doors, whispers stir. Trust falters, passions awaken, and secrets long hidden begin to surface. Every glance, every word, every subtle smile carries the weight of destiny. For Loki has returned, not merely to jest, but to weave a web so intricate that even the All-Father himself cannot escape. In this second chapter of his tale, you will witness the trickster's greatest art, the corruption of hearts, the awakening of desire, and the careful preparation of Ragnarok itself. Every ally, every enemy, every unwitting participant is a thread in his grand design. And as his children stir in shadowed corners of the realms, the stage is set for betrayal, fire, and the shattering of divine bonds. Welcome back to Loki's world, where charm is a weapon, seduction is a trap, and even gods may fall to the whisper of a smile. The fire of mischief was not only in Loki's hands, it was in his voice, his gaze, his very breath. He could slip into a feast in Asgard and, without lifting a finger, weave invisible threads between the hearts of gods and goddesses. His laughter, sharp yet inviting, could make even the most guarded warrior lean closer, unsure if they were mocked or adored. He had the art of touching the soul without ever laying a hand upon it. Thor's pride was his favorite toy. A single jest about the Thunderer's strength would drive Thor to foolish contests, smashing halls and frightening mortals, all while Loki watched with a smirk. Freyja, radiant as the sun, found herself both flattered and insulted by Loki's words, for he praised her beauty only to remind her that desire makes prisoners of even the strongest hearts. Odin himself, the All-Father, knew Loki was dangerous, but even he could not resist listening when Loki whispered secrets of hidden worlds, of shadows where power slept. No feast was safe, no counsel untouched. Wherever Loki moved, suspicion followed like smoke after fire. He was the serpent in the grass, the spark in dry wood, the storm behind calm skies. And yet, the gods could never cast him out. For in every jest lay truth, in every insult lay warning, and in every lie, a glimpse of destiny. No chain could hold Loki's spirit, for he was not bound to a single face or form. He wore the shapes of beasts, of men, of women, even of shadows that slithered across stone. To him, flesh was but a cloak, and he, its master tailor. When the gods searched for him, he could appear as a hawk streaking through the skies, or as an old crone muttering riddles in the firelight. But it was not only escape that drove his transformations, it was temptation. Once, he became a mare, her coat shining like midnight silk, luring away the stallion of a giant who sought to build Asgard's walls. The gods whispered of this with unease, for never had trickery tasted so much like seduction. From that union, strange offspring would later shake the heavens, yet Loki spoke of it with laughter, as if it were but another jest spun in the golden halls. At other times, he became a woman of impossible beauty, her eyes like frozen rivers that promised both pleasure and peril. Men fell to their knees, not knowing they bent before a god of fire and deceit. Even the wise were snared, for Loki's art was not mere disguise, it was the awakening of desire hidden deep within those who beheld him. Every form he wore was a weapon, every glance a spell, every whispered word a thread in a tapestry of chaos. To resist him was to resist one's own longing, and few, whether god or mortal, were strong enough to turn away. Whispers spread through Asgard like wildfire, that Loki was not merely a trickster, but a weaver of desire, a seducer of fates. For when he wished to ensnare, he did not strike with blade or flame. He struck with longing. His laughter was a melody that lingered in the ear long after he vanished, his touch a phantom that burned on the skin. Odin himself once warned the younger gods, beware the glance of Loki, for it is never just a glance. It is a bargain unspoken, a door to chaos that once opened, will never close. And yet, even Allfather was not free of doubt. For in the council of gods, when Loki spoke with honeyed words, a strange silence often followed. Each god, from Thor to Freyr, felt the pull of his charm, though none dared confess it. There were nights when he walked among mortals, draped in a beauty no human could deny. Tavern maidens swore of a stranger with eyes like embers and a smile that set their hearts ablaze. Kings' daughters told of dreams where a figure came to them, neither man nor woman, but something beyond, leaving them breathless with yearning. And always, when dawn came, the stranger was gone, yet their lives were forever changed. But Loki's seductions were not only of flesh. He offered freedom to the enslaved, forbidden knowledge to the curious, hidden power to the desperate. Many who yielded to him rose to glory, only to find themselves undone when the trickster demanded payment. For every kiss, every secret, every promise, was another knot in Loki's great web. And when that web tightened, even gods struggled to break free. Loki knew that desire was sharper than any sword. And so he wielded it with mastery. In the grand feasts of Asgard, while mead spilled and warriors roared, his eyes would linger where they should not, on the lips of queens, the shoulders of maidens, even on the proud faces of gods themselves. He turned attention into a weapon, intimacy into a chain. One tale whispers of the goddess Idun, keeper of the golden apples of youth. Loki's voice, soft as silk, convinced her to leave the safety of Asgard's walls. He spoke not of theft or treachery, but of freedom, of tasting the world beyond. She followed him, heart pounding, not knowing she walked into the jaws of giants. Some say he betrayed her for power, others swear it was seduction itself that led her astray. Yet Loki's kiss was never simple passion. It was venom and honey entwined. Those who tasted it found themselves dreaming of fire, of serpents coiling around their bodies, whispering secrets that left them trembling with both fear and longing. Mortal or divine, none could deny the strange hunger he awakened. And so legends grew, that Loki carried within him the heat of Muspelheim and the chill of Niflheim, fire and frost entwined in one body. To love him was to burn and freeze at once, to stand at the edge of ecstasy and ruin. Many sought him, yet more fled from him, for desire was a snare, and in Loki's embrace, none ever left untouched. But it was not only lust he sowed. Every heart he conquered became a thread, woven into a tapestry of schemes. For Loki knew, when Ragnarok came, the gods would not only fear his monsters. They would remember his smile, his touch, his kiss, and tremble. For Loki, passion was never the end, it was the beginning of power. Those who had surrendered to his charm carried more than a memory. They carried chains, invisible yet unbreakable. A whispered word, a glance, a sly reminder of what had passed in the shadows, and the strongest of hearts would falter. It was said that even Frigg, Odin's queen, once feared the weight of his tongue's poison, for Loki knew secrets that could break her. Thor's pride, fierce as thunder, could be unbalanced with a single mocking smile, for somewhere deep within, Loki had planted doubt. And the young gods and goddesses of Asgard, who laughed too easily and blushed too quickly, carried with them the echo of nights they dared never confess. He wove these threads together into a hidden net. To the outside eye, Loki was still the jester, the trickster, the one to mock and jest. But beneath the laughter was a map of hearts conquered, of passions inflamed. Each glance across the feast hall was a reminder, each hushed silence proof of a bond unseen. And when he chose to pull upon these chains, chaos would ripple like fire through dry grass. A whisper here could make a warrior hesitate, a mocking jest there could turn friend against friend. The gods did not see it then, but Loki was not only their jester, he was their hidden master. For no sword could pierce as deeply as desire, and no fetter could bind as tightly as shame. Thus, Loki prepared for the day when bonds of lust and longing would weigh heavier than the strongest iron chains. And when the world's end approached, he would not stand alone. The hearts of gods themselves would beat in his hands. As time stretched like a taut string across the halls of Asgard, Loki began to tug upon the threads he had so carefully spun. No great army marched at his command, no banners bore his sigil, yet his power was greater than any legion. For his weapons were whispers, and his battleground was the heart. In the great feasts, he would lean across the table, his eyes gleaming with secrets, and murmur words that only one could hear. A reminder of a night long hidden, a confession once shared in trembling passion. The god or goddess who heard it would pale, their laughter faltering, their goblet trembling in hand. Around them, no one noticed, but Loki saw the shift, and his smile grew sharper. He whispered to warriors of Asgard, planting doubt in their strength. He teased the queens and maidens, rekindling desires they longed to forget. He reminded the All-Father himself of oaths broken in shadows, of truths buried beneath golden masks. And though Odin's one eye burned with suspicion, he could not deny that somewhere deep inside, Loki's words carried the weight of dangerous truth. By night, Loki walked the halls like a shadow, unseen yet felt, his laughter echoing in the dreams of those who tried to sleep. By day, he jested and tricked as always, so none could accuse him openly. But in secret, the gods began to glance at one another with mistrust. Bonds frayed. Passions burned into jealousy. Trust cracked like ice under spring thaw. And Loki, the weaver of chaos, knew the moment was near. The web was almost ready to close, and when it did, not even the mighty Odin could untangle himself from its threads. It began, as all storms do, with a single spark. A feast in Odin's hall, where torches blazed, horns overflowed with mead, and the laughter of gods filled the air. Yet beneath the music and revelry, Loki's whispers coiled like serpents in the grass. He had planted seeds of jealousy, secrets of passion, and doubts of loyalty, and now he came to reap the harvest. With a sly smile, he raised his goblet high. "Tell me, noble gods," he drawled, his voice dripping with mockery, how many of you would be seated here if the truth of your hearts were known?" His words cut through the air sharper than any blade. At once, faces flushed. Freyr's eyes narrowed like daggers, for she knew what truth he hinted at. George shifted uneasily, remembering nights of weakness Loki alone had witnessed. Even Thor slammed his fist on the table, his rage already kindled, though he knew not yet at whom. Loki pressed further, his tongue as deadly as a serpent's fang. He recited secrets disguised as jokes, recalling stolen nights of lust, bargains whispered in shadows, and betrayals sealed with trembling hands. Each word struck like fire, and gods who once feasted as kin now glared at one another with suspicion and fury. The hall trembled. Thor leapt to his feet, demanding silence. But by then it was too late. The storm had broken. Accusations flew like arrows, and the once mighty bonds of Asgard cracked before Loki's delighted gaze. In the chaos, his laughter rang out, low, mocking, intoxicating. Mighty easy, he hissed, you fight not because of me, but because of yourselves. I am but the mirror of your hidden sins. And in that moment, Asgard's golden hall, once a sanctuary of unity, became a battlefield of hearts. As the gods clashed with words and fists, Loki slipped into the shadows like a serpent retreating into tall grass. No one noticed his departure. Every eye was locked on the quarrel he himself had ignited. The golden hall thundered with anger, yet Loki's steps were silent, purposeful, leading him toward a far darker secret. Beyond Asgard's feast halls lay the dungeons, deep caverns where the All-Father's judgment had banished 3 of Loki's monstrous children. Fenrir, the wolf who had grown too vast to walk freely. Jörmungandr, the serpent who coiled beneath the seas, his body stretching to encircle the world. And Hel, the pale daughter whose gaze withered joy and who ruled over the realm of the dead. The gods had bound them out of fear. Yet fear alone had never kept Loki at bay. He stood at the threshold, torchlight flickering across his sharp grin. My beloved children, he whispered, voice smooth as silk, the time is coming when chains will not hold you. Even now the easy tear each other apart. Soon, they will have no strength left to bind you again. Fenrir growled from his iron fetters, eyes burning like embers. Jörmungandr stirred beneath unseen waves, a tremor running through the earth itself. Hel remained silent, yet the chill of her presence was enough to make even her father's breath falter for a moment. Loki reached out, tracing the runes of the bindings. He did not yet break them. No, not yet. To shatter the chains too early would bring the full wrath of Odin down upon him. Instead, he whispered spells into the runes, corrupting them, weakening them, planting seeds that would bloom on the day of doom. As he turned away, a flicker of light revealed his face, half shadow, half fire, eyes gleaming with triumph. Soon, he murmured, the world shall know my children's hunger. And together, we shall devour the gods. In the hall above, the quarrel reached its peak. Below, in silence, the first cracks spread across the chains of destiny. Far above the hidden caverns where Loki whispered to his children, the All-Father sat alone upon his high seat, Hlidskjalf, from where he could see across all realms. The quarrel in the hall had left a bitter taste in his mouth. Words once spoken among the gods had grown sharp, poisoned by distrust. Odin's one good eye glimmered as he peered into the worlds, seeking the root of this unrest. He saw shadows shifting where none should be. He heard whispers carried on the wind, serpentine and sly, curling like smoke. The threads of fate, once taut and clear, now writhed as though tangled by unseen hands. And in the distance, faint but unmistakable, Odin heard it, the low rumble of Fenrir's growl, the hiss of Jörmungandr stirring in the deep, the silent pull of Hel's cold breath. A shiver touched even the All-Father's bones. He gripped Gungnir, his mighty spear, and spoke aloud though none stood beside him. For it is Loki. Only Loki could weave such chaos beneath our very feet. Yet when Odin descended to the Golden Hall, his warnings fell upon deaf ears. Thor still burned with fury from the earlier quarrel, eager to test his hammer against those who had mocked him. Freyr dismissed Odin's words with a weary sigh, insisting that Asgard had faced worse storms. Even wise Frigg, his beloved, counselled patience, urging him not to act rashly against Loki without proof. Odin's eye darkened. Proof. That was Loki's greatest weapon. His tricks left no blade in the hand, no blood on the floor, only suspicion that corroded trust like acid. And so, as the gods feasted again to mask their unease, Odin stood apart, silent and grim. He knew in his heart that chains were weakening, that shadows lengthened with each passing day. But even the All-Father, for all his wisdom, could not stop what was already in motion. In the far distance, beyond sight of gods and men, Loki's laughter rippled through the night, low, mocking, triumphant. Far from Asgard's golden walls, where frost and fire clashed in eternal chaos, Loki wandered into Jotunheim, the land of the giants, his mother's kin. The realm was harsh and merciless, jagged mountains crowned with ice, rivers that boiled with volcanic fire, and skies where storms never ceased to roar. But Loki walked as though he belonged, his crimson cloak snapping in the wind, his sly smile unbroken by the cold. The giants, towering and terrible, gathered around him with suspicion. They remembered Loki not as ally but as trickster, one who had mocked their strength, stolen their treasures, and betrayed their secrets to the gods. Clubs were raised, voices thundered, and the ground itself shook with their rage. But Loki, with silver words and serpent's tongue, calmed their fury. He reminded them of their ancient hatred for Odin and the Easy, who had banished them from the high places of power. He painted pictures with his words: Asgard in flames, Thor's skull cracked beneath the jaws of Fenrir, the rainbow bridge shattered into 1,000 broken shards. Brothers of frost and fire, he cried, his voice echoing through the canyons, your day will come. And when it does, you shall not march alone. My children are strong, stronger than the sons of Odin. Fenrir waits in the shadows, his hunger unchained. Jörmungandr coils around the seas, ready to rise. And Hel, queen of the dead, commands an army that no spear can pierce, no sword can fell. Stand with me, and the world will bow to your vengeance. The giants roared, their anger now a weapon Loki had forged into purpose. Their leader, a monstrous frost giant whose skin glittered like frozen steel, stepped forward. Trickster, he growled, we do not trust you. But your words, they burn with truth. If Ragnarok comes, we will be there. Loki bowed, his smile widening, though his eyes burned with secret fire. He had planted the seed, and it would grow. The gods still feasted in their halls, blind to the storm, gathering in the dark. And as the night deepened over Jotunheim, Loki whispered to himself, the end has already begun. After sealing his secret pact with the Jötnar, Loki turned his gaze to his own blood, the monstrous offspring that bound him more to the shadows than to the shining halls of Asgard. For what use were oaths and promises if his children were not yet ready to unleash the storm? He travelled first to the iron gates of Niflheim, where the air was heavy with the stench of decay, and silence was broken only by the whispers of restless souls. There, seated on her throne of bone and shadow, was Hel, half her face beautiful as a maiden, the other half pale and rotted like a corpse. She did not rise to greet him. Her eyes, cold as the grave, regarded him with weary contempt. Farther, she said in a voice that was both music and funeral dirge, why do you come here? You cast me away to this place, as Odin commanded. And now you seek my loyalty? Loki knelt before her, though mockery flickered in his smile. Not loyalty, daughter, destiny. You rule more than the gods will ever admit. The forgotten, the broken, the dead, they are yours. And when the trumpet of doom is blown, they shall march for you, and through you, for me. Hel's lips curled into a thin smile, her skeletal fingers caressing the armrest of her throne. Then let the gods tremble, as she whispered, if for the dead are patient. Satisfied, Loki left the realm of shadows and journeyed to the stormy seas. There, deep beneath crashing waves, coiled Jörmungandr, the world serpent. His body stretched farther than sight could follow, encircling the earth itself. Loki spoke into the abyss, his voice carried by magic into the serpent's ears. My son, you are bound by waters, yet your power is endless. When the day comes, rise from the depths. Spew your venom, choke the skies, and drag Thor beneath the waves. Are you ready? The sea heaved, waves towering like mountains. A hiss reverberated from the depths, shaking the coasts of Midgard. The answer was not in words, but in the violent lashing of the ocean. Jörmungandr was ready. Finally, Loki came to Fenrir, bound in chains of magical iron. Gleipnir, the fetter spun from impossible things, the sound of a cat's footstep, the roots of a mountain, the breath of fish. The wolf's eyes blazed like suns of fury, and his jaws could have swallowed the world. Farther! Fenrir thundered, straining at his bonds. The gods have tricked me, caged me like a beast. When I am free, I shall devour the very sun. Loki placed a hand upon his son's fur, the chains quivering under the wolf's rage. Patience, my son. Your time will come. And when it does, you shall not only swallow the sun, you shall tear the heart from Odin himself. Fenrir's growl was so deep it shook the roots of Yggdrasil. His promise was carved into the marrow of the world. Vengeance was inevitable. As Loki departed, his laughter carried across land, sea, and underworld. His children were ready. Ragnarok no longer felt like prophecy. It felt like a plan. While Hel sharpened her dominion over the dead, while the world serpent stirred the seas, and while Fenrir's fury strained against his fetters, Loki turned his steps once more toward Asgard, the golden citadel gleaming like a beacon across the 9 realms. He walked not as a beggar nor as a captive, but cloaked in cunning illusions. His stride was hidden, his face veiled in glamour, and his laughter silenced. He moved like a shadow among gods. The halls of Valaskjaf resounded with the boasting of warriors, the clang of feasts, and the songs of skalds. But Loki heard beneath the noise a sweeter melody. Envy, pride, doubt, each a note he could pluck like the strings of a harp. He came first to the Allfather's throne room, unseen, and watched as Odin's one eye flickered with suspicion, though none knew why. Odin whispered with Frigg of visions too grim to share, of wolves in his dreams, of oceans boiling with poison. Loki smiled, for he knew those dreams were no mere shadows. Then, slipping like mist through the corridors, he found Thor. The Thunderer sat sharpening Jötnar, ever hungry for battle. Loki whispered into the storm god's heart, unseen. Your brother Baldr shines brighter than you. The people love him more. They will crown him king of men before they sing your name. Thor's jaw clenched, his hand tightening on his hammer. He rose in silence, his heart kindling with unspoken rage. Next, Loki brushed past Heimdall, who stood eternal guard at Bifrost. Into his ear he breathed. Odin does not trust you. Why else keep you ever at the gates, never at his side? You are a watchdog, not a god. Heimdall's eyes narrowed, his hand gripping Gjallarhorn. Though he saw no figure, he felt the venom of doubt seep into his soul. And last, Loki's whisper reached Frigg, queen of the easy, mother of Baldr. He sowed his most delicate seed. What if prophecy cannot be undone? What if Baldr must die, no matter how you guard him? Will you defy fate itself, or doom your son by your fear? Her heart quaked, though she hid it with the grace of a queen. By the time Loki's shadow left the Golden City, no god had seen his face, no voice was recognized as his own. Yet suspicion smoldered where trust had once burned, and cracks spread silently through the unity of Asgard. Loki did not need to raise his hand in battle. His war had already begun. Far above the 9 realms, the halls of Asgard glimmered like molten gold beneath the eternal skies. Within those radiant walls lived Baldr, the beloved. His beauty was as dawn's first light, his laughter like the ringing of silver bells, his heart pure as a spring untouched by shadow. No god nor mortal, no giant nor dwarf, could look upon Baldr without warmth blossoming in their soul. He was light itself, unmarred, unbroken. And Loki despised him. For in Baldr's glow, Loki's own cunning seemed dim. In Baldr's laughter, his own mockery was hollow. In Baldr's love, Loki found himself an exile. To strike at Odin or Thor was perilous, but to wound Baldr was to wound the very heart of Asgard. The whispers Loki had scattered now bore fruit. Odin's brow was heavy with grim foresight. Frigg fretted like a falcon shielding her nest. Thor sharpened his hammer with restless fury. And yet, amid all the gods' anxieties, Baldr remained untroubled, smiling, gentle, radiant as ever. It was then that Loki, watching unseen, resolved to unravel that light. He travelled to Frigg, cloaked in the form of an old crone, her voice frail yet her eyes bright with hidden fire. He sat by the queen as she tended her garden, where every plant bent with reverence toward her. Frigg, burdened by visions of doom, spoke freely to the seeming stranger. "I have made the world swear an oath," as she whispered, her voice trembling, "an oath never to harm my son. Fire and water, iron and stone, beast and root, disease and venom, all have sworn to spare Baldr." The old crone, Loki, tilted her head, feigning innocence. "All? Surely there is something so small, so harmless, it was not bound by oath." Frigg laughed softly. "A trifle only, the mistletoe. Too young, too fragile, too weak to bind. What harm could such a thing do?" And in that moment, Loki's smile curled beneath the mask. He bowed, muttered thanks, and departed as silently as he had come. Through the forests of Midgard he strode, until he found it, a slender sprig of mistletoe, pale and green, shivering in the breeze. Loki plucked it with reverence, as though holding the key to eternity itself. In his hands, the frail twig grew sharp as a spear, its tip gleaming with the promise of doom. "This," Loki whispered to the silent sky, "he will be the thorn in the heart of the gods. Let them laugh no longer." The gods gathered in Asgard's shining courtyard, laughter and music echoing across the halls. Baldr stood in the center, radiant as ever, his hair like spun gold and his eyes shimmering like morning skies. Around him, the gods took aim, not with malice, but in jest. Every weapon of Asgard was brought forth. Thor hurled his hammer with gentle force, testing, yet holding back, while warriors and goddesses cast spears, arrows, and enchanted stones. Each struck him, bounced off, harmless as a raindrop on sunlit water. The courtyard rang with delight, each miss a testament to Baldr's fabled invulnerability. The All-Father watched, pride gleaming in his one eye, satisfied that his son's protection held. Frigg's heart swelled, a mixture of relief and joy. Even Thor's thunderous laughter shook the halls. Yet in the shadows, Loki observed. His eyes glimmered with anticipation, a predator in the golden grass. Every laugh, every cheer, only fed his hunger. For he knew what the gods did not. The smallest thing, overlooked, insignificant, could carry the weight of fate itself. And there it was, hidden in Loki's hand, pale and fragile, the sprig of mistletoe. Its delicate leaves belied the doom it carried. With a flick of his fingers, the weapon of destiny was passed unnoticed into the hands of a god, who, oblivious, would release it at the perfect moment. The gods continued their game, tossing spears and arrows, each strike harmless, each cheer louder than the last. Loki's lips curled into a slow, knowing smile. The stage was set. In a matter of moments, the laughter would die, and Asgard's golden heart would shatter. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath, sensing the tension that only the trickster could weave. For in that playful game, the first threads of tragedy were spun, invisible yet unbreakable. And Loki whispered to himself, soft as a lover's secret, the end has already begun. The courtyard of Asgard, once filled with laughter and gleaming sunlight, froze in an instant. The game of harmless throws had ended with a single, frail sprig. An unsuspecting hand, guided by Loki's cunning, released the mistletoe. It flew, light as a feather, yet heavy with destiny, striking Baldr upon his heart. Time seemed to halt. Baldr's radiant eyes widened in disbelief. A gasp escaped his lips, a sound so soft, so pure, that even the wind seemed to catch it. And then, he fell. Not with the strength of an enemy's strike, but with the quiet inevitability of fate itself. The golden glow that had surrounded him dimmed, flickering like a candle in the wind. Thor's hammer froze mid-swing. The All-Father's one eye burned with horror. Frigg's hands flew to her face, her heart shattering at the sight of her beloved son struck down. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the gods. Some fell to their knees, others shouted in anger, their voices echoing like thunder against Asgard's walls. And through it all, a low, subtle sound cut beneath the chaos, Loki's laughter. Soft, almost tender, yet sharp enough to pierce the heart of the mightiest. No one saw him, no one suspected his hand, yet the trickster's triumph was complete. The first thread of Ragnarok had been pulled, and the golden halls were trembling with shock and fear. Baldr's fall was more than a wound. It was a mirror reflecting the cracks Loki had sown in the hearts of gods. Trust, joy, innocence, all shattered by a single, cunningly delivered sprig. Even the sun seemed to dim in silent lament. And Loki, hidden in shadow, whispered, "Ere as the light falls, the shadows rise." Imagine a god who cannot be tamed, whose laughter cuts deeper than any blade. A being of fire and shadow, mischief and cunning, moving unseen among the mighty, planting chaos like seeds in fertile soil. This is Loki, the master of deceit, the seducer of gods, the father of monsters. The halls of Asgard gleam with gold, the laughter of gods echoing through the air, but behind the gilded doors, whispers stir. Trust falters, passions awaken, and secrets long hidden begin to surface. Every glance, every word, every subtle smile carries the weight of destiny. For Loki has returned, not merely to jest, but to weave a web so intricate that even the All-Father himself cannot escape. In this second chapter of his tale, you will witness the trickster's greatest art, the corruption of hearts, the awakening of desire, and the careful preparation of Ragnarok itself. Every ally, every enemy, every unwitting participant is a thread in his grand design. And as his children stir in shadowed corners of the realms, the stage is set for betrayal, fire, and the shattering of divine bonds. Welcome back to Loki's world, where charm is a weapon, seduction is a trap, and even gods may fall to the whisper of a smile.